I don't take loads across West Texas at night anymore. Most drivers assume I mean the usual things: deer, drunks, fatigue, bad weather. I let them think that because the truth sounds like the kind of story a man tells when too much highway gets into his head. But I know what happened, and I know there are 3 hours of my life I can't explain. It happened in August 2004. I was hauling a refrigerated load of produce, cutting through one of those stretches of road where the world feels empty on purpose. No towns, barely any traffic. I was still alert, still talking to myself, still deciding whether to stop later for coffee. Then everything outside went silent, not gradually. One moment there was the hum of tires and the faint night noise, and the next there was nothing. Even the truck sounded muted, like I was driving underwater. I checked the dash. Everything looked normal. Then my CB came on. "Eddie, pull over." It was my dispatcher's voice. That shouldn't have been possible. She never used a CB unless something had gone very wrong, and even then, the voice sounded off too flat, too clean. "Eddie," it said again. "Pull over now." I picked up the mic. "Tammy?" No answer. The display wasn't even set to the right channel. I should have kept going. But hearing your own name does something to you. About half a mile ahead, I saw a dirt access road through a fence line and eased the truck over. The second my rig got fully off the pavement, the engine died. Not sputtered, died. The strange part was the rest of the truck stayed alive. The cab lights were on. The AC fan kept blowing. The refrigerated unit behind me kept humming. Just the engine stopped, like somebody had reached down and switched it off. I tried the ignition twice. Nothing. Then a shadow passed over the cab. I looked up through the windshield and saw something hanging above the road behind me, maybe 100 yards back. At first my mind refused to label it. It was too still, too smooth. A dark oval with a pale ring of light underneath, as if heat lightning had been trapped. No wings, no markings, no sound. Just a shape suspended over the highway, like it had been placed there. I remember saying, "No," out loud, because saying what it is makes it real. The cab lights dimmed. My phone, which had been half charged in the cup holder, went black. Then the air changed. It got cold in a way that didn't belong outside in August. Not desert cold, hospital cold. A beam came down from the object, not a normal shaft of light. It looked dense, almost solid, with dust lifting straight upward inside it. And standing in that beam was a figure. At first I thought it was a person. Then I saw the proportions were wrong. Too narrow, arms too long, head too large and too still. It stood facing my truck, and the worst part was the feeling that it hadn't arrived with the light. The light had just made it visible. Then my mirrors folded inward by themselves. First the driver's side, then the passenger side. I jerked back in my seat. Before I could react, both windows started lowering. I hit the controls and stopped my side halfway, but the passenger window went all the way down. Instead of hot desert air, a dead cold came into the cab, carrying a smell like ozone and wet stone. The figure started walking toward me. No hurry, no wasted motion. Just one step after another. I grabbed my flashlight and aimed it through the open passenger window. The beam hit its chest and bent, as if I were shining it through heat waves. When it reached the side of the cab, I got my first clear look. It was roughly human height, maybe a little taller, but thin in a way that didn't look weak. Its skin shifted strangely in the light, gray 1 second, almost translucent the next. Its face was narrow and flat, no hair, no visible ears. Its eyes were huge, black, and calm. Not curious, calm. The kind of eyes that examine. Then I heard my wife's voice from the sleeper behind me. "Eddie?" I turned around so fast I nearly tore something. The bunk was empty, but the mattress was sinking as if something invisible had just knelt on it. "Eddie," her voice said again, soft and frightened. "Please, my wife was at home, 2 states away." I snatched up my tire thumper and swung into the sleeper. It hit the wall. The voice stopped. Outside the passenger window, the thing hadn't moved. It just watched me. Then a thought appeared in my head so clearly it felt spoken. "Do not damage yourself." That scared me worse than the sight of it. Another thought followed. "Come outside." I locked the doors even though I already knew locks meant nothing. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the thumper. I glanced at the clock on the dash and realized I couldn't remember what time it had been. 10-something, I thought. 10:09, maybe. 10:12. My memory already felt slippery. Then something tapped the windshield. 3 light taps. The figure was still at the passenger window. I looked up. Another one was crouched on the hood. Its hands were spread on the glass, long, pale fingers splayed, inches from my face. Its head was too large, its skin almost white in the dashboard glow, and beneath the skin I could see faint moving lines, as if light were drifting through it. It tilted its head and stared at me like I was the strange one. I screamed and swung the tire thumper at the windshield. Before it connected, the thing vanished upward. At that exact moment, the engine roared back to life. The horn blasted beneath my hand. The cab lights brightened. The mirrors snapped open. Everything woke up at once, like the truck had been released. I slammed it into gear and floored it. The rear tires spat dirt and rock. The trailer bounced hard enough that I thought I might roll it, but the truck tore back onto the highway and straightened out. I didn't look behind me at first. I couldn't. My hands were locked so tight on the wheel, they hurt. When I finally checked the mirror, the road was empty. No object, no beam, no figures, just darkness. About 40 minutes later, I found a gas station with a diner attached and pulled in. I was sweating through my shirt even though I still felt cold all the way down to my bones. I went inside and asked the woman what time it was. She looked at the wall clock and said 1:26. I actually laughed because I thought she had to be joking. She wasn't. I had lost more than 3 hours. The truck system showed I'd been stationary for 3 hours and 11 minutes, but not where I remembered stopping. My phone rebooted while I was standing there. The first thing that popped up was a missed call from my wife at 12:03, then a voicemail. She was crying in it. She said I had called her at 11:41, but when she answered, I didn't say anything. She heard breathing and a low humming sound. Then, after about 20 seconds, she heard her own voice say, "He's here," and the call disconnected. I never made that call. When I went back outside, there was a handprint on the inside of the passenger window. Not mine. The fingers were too long, and in the dust on the hood, right above the windshield, were 2 narrow impressions shaped like knees. I finished the load, because that's what drivers do. Then I went home and slept almost 16 hours straight. A week later, I found 3 tiny marks behind my right ear, healed over in a perfect triangle. but doctor said they looked like punctures or maybe a strange bite pattern. I let him believe that. I still drive, but not that route at night. I don't leave the CB on when I'm alone, and if I ever hear a familiar voice tell me to pull over. On an empty road, I'm driving until the tank runs dry, because whatever was out there didn't feel lost and it didn't feel curious. It felt practiced, like it had done that before, like somewhere over a dark stretch of highway, it's still waiting for another lonely truck to stop. By the time I hit the mountain road, I already regretted taking the shortcut. Dispatch had sworn it would save me 45 minutes, which usually meant trouble. I was hauling a dry van full of paper products through northern Oregon, trying to make a morning delivery after getting loaded late. The GPS had pushed me off the interstate onto a 2-lane road that cut through miles of forest. At 1:30 in the morning, it felt like driving through a tunnel made of black trees. My headlights only reached so far, and beyond them was nothing but wet trunks, tangled brush, and sharp bends in the road. Rain had come through earlier, and the pavement still shone in patches. Every so often wind shook the branches overhead, and water hissed across the roof of the cab. I had the radio low and the window cracked just enough to keep myself awake. The air smelled like pine, mud, and diesel. No other headlights had passed me in 20 minutes. Then the CB crackled. At first it was just a burst of static, loud enough to make me flinch. Mountain roads always messed with reception, so I reached over to turn the volume down. A few seconds later it happened again, and this time I heard something underneath it. It sounded like a woman crying. It lasted maybe 2 seconds, then cut out. I told myself it was radio bleed, somebody on another channel mixing through the static. There was always an explanation if you wanted one badly enough. Still, I rolled my window all the way up. The road bent left, then straightened. That was when I saw her. She stood on the shoulder just beyond my headlights, wearing what looked like a long white nightgown, barefoot, hair hanging dark and wet around her face. She was completely still, head lowered, one arm at her side. I hit the brakes on instinct. The trailer shuddered behind me. By the time the truck stopped, I was 50 yards past her. My heart was hammering. I grabbed the radio mic without thinking. "You okay?" No answer. In the red glow of my trailer lights, I could still see her back there, small and pale against the trees. For a few seconds, I just sat there. You hear stories as a driver. People stage breakdowns, fake injuries, anything to get you to stop. I knew better than to hop out for something strange in the dark, but leaving somebody there felt wrong too. I picked up my phone. No signal. Of course. I grabbed the flashlight beside my seat and climbed down, telling myself I'd keep the cab door open. The night swallowed me the second my boots hit the pavement. It was colder on the ground, and the forest sounded louder than it had from inside the truck. Water dripping from branches, wind moving high above, my engine ticking as it cooled. I swept the flashlight beam back toward the shoulder. She was gone. I stood there confused, staring at an empty stretch of road. Then I heard footsteps in the brush to my right. Not animal movement, actual footsteps. Slow and careful. "Hello," I called. The sound stopped. I swung the flashlight toward the woods. Nothing but wet branches and black gaps between trunks. I backed toward the truck, suddenly feeling exposed in the wash of my own headlights. That's when I noticed the rear trailer doors. They were open, both of them. I froze. I'd checked them at the shipper. I always checked them, but now they stood wide open, and the inside of the trailer was a deep black rectangle. The seal was gone. I hurried back to the cab and grabbed the tire thumper I kept by the seat. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. I shined the flashlight toward the trailer again. Something moved inside, just a shape crossing the darkness near the front of the van. There shouldn't be anybody in there, I said out loud, though I was really saying it to myself. Then a woman's voice came from the forest across the road. Please help me. I swung around so fast the flashlight beam shook. Between the trunks, maybe 30 feet in, I saw her again. Same white gown, same wet hair hanging over her face. One hand was raised slightly, like she wanted me to come closer. He won't let me leave, she said. Every part of me went cold. Something was wrong with the way she stood. Her knees looked bent too far back. Her head tilted at an angle that didn't seem natural, and the arm she had lifted looked a little too long. I took one step back. She slowly raised her head. Through the strands of hair, I saw her mouth stretching into a smile far too wide for a human face. My flashlight died, not dimmed. The darkness hit me like a wall. For one awful second, the only light came from my cab and trailer lamps, and in that half-dark I heard movement from everywhere at once. Brush snapping, leaves crunching, something circling the truck on quick, light feet. I dropped the flashlight and ran for the cab. Halfway there, something slammed the inside of the trailer. The whole truck jumped. Then it happened again and again. Heavy impacts moving from the front of the trailer toward the rear doors, like something inside was hurling itself down the wall. I scrambled into the cab, locked the door, and jammed the key into the ignition. The engine turned over once, then died. Outside, the woman stepped out of the tree line. She wasn't barefoot in any normal sense. Her feet were blackened and long, like roots dragged out of wet soil. Her gown hung in soaked strips. Water dripped from her hair even though the rain had stopped. She walked toward the truck with a jerking, unnatural motion, smiling that impossible smile. The impacts in the trailer reached the back. One huge bang shook the cab. I looked in the mirror. The trailer doors were still open, but something was standing in them now. A silhouette too tall for the opening, bent under the frame. It looked like a person made of branches and darkness, with antler-like shapes rising from its head. The woman kept coming. She stopped beside my window and placed one hand against the glass. Her fingernails were long, cracked, and packed with dirt. The second her palm touched the window, the inside of the cab fogged with cold. Then she knocked. 3 soft taps. Behind me, the thing in the trailer lowered itself and began crawling toward the opening. I hit the ignition again and held it. The starter whined uselessly. Her face was inches from mine now, smiling through the glass. I could finally see her eyes. They were completely black, glossy, and depthless, like deep water at night. She opened her mouth. The voice that came out wasn't hers. It was an old man's voice, rough and amused. "You let us in." At that exact moment, the CB exploded with static so loud it rattled the cab. And through it, clear as day, another driver's voice shouted, "Move now." That snapped something in me. I stopped the gas and turned the key again. The engine roared to life. The woman's smile dropped instantly. I threw the truck into gear and hammered forward. Gravel spit from under the tires. I didn't care about trailer doors, seals, freight, or anything else. I just wanted speed. The truck fishtailed once, corrected, and tore down the road. In the side mirror, I caught one last glimpse of the forest shoulder. The woman was gone, but the thing from the trailer wasn't. It was running along the tree line parallel to me, and possibly fast, weaving between the trunks without losing pace. Every time my lights caught it, it seemed shaped a little differently. Sometimes thin as a man, sometimes broad as a deer standing upright, its antlers scraping branches far too high off the ground. Then the road curved hard right, and it was gone. I drove until dawn. At the first gas station I found, I called the state police and told them someone had opened my trailer in the woods. When the officer arrived, I took him outside and showed him the back of the trailer. The doors were shut, sealed. The plastic tag was intact. He looked inside anyway after I broke it open in front of him. The load was untouched, straps tight. No footprints, no sign anyone had been inside. I nearly convinced myself I'd imagined everything. Then I walked around to the driver's side door. On the window, just above the handle, were 3 muddy fingerprints. Long, narrow, and too widely spaced to be human. I still drive night runs, but I don't take forced shortcuts anymore, no matter what dispatch promises. And if I ever hear a crying woman over dead CB static on an empty mountain road, I'm not touching the brakes, because I don't think that thing was stranded. The first voice came somewhere west of Amarillo, just after 2 o'clock in the morning. I remember the time because I had just checked the dash clock. I was hauling frozen food eastbound through the Texas Panhandle, and the highway had gone so empty, it felt like I was driving across the bottom of the ocean. No cars, no trucks, no town lights. Just black fields on both sides and the steady drone of my engine with the reefer humming behind me. Most nights I kept the CB low out of habit. It makes a lonely road feel less dead. That night, Channel 19 had been quiet when the speaker crackled and a man's voice said, "Clear as if you were sitting beside me, you missed your exit." I glanced at the GPS on instinct. My route was straight ahead. I picked up the mic. Must be talking to somebody else. Radios cross-talk. Signals bounce. You hear half a conversation from 20 miles away. That's normal. 10 minutes later, the voice came back. Same man. "You missed your exit, driver." This time I frowned. "No, I didn't." Then he said, "I told you not to pass the church." That got my attention. There had been a little white church. I keyed the mic. "Who is this?" The answer came before I let go of the button. "You need to turn around." That was the first moment I felt something cold work its way up my spine. I told myself it was just another driver. I said, "Knock it off," static hissed. Then a second voice came through. A woman, very soft and very close. "He hears you." I nearly drove onto the shoulder. That should have ended it. But 30 seconds later, I heard the woman again, not from the speaker, from the sleeper behind me. "He hears you." I hit the brakes hard enough to feel the trailer tug. I twisted around so fast I pulled something in my neck. The bunk was empty, nothing there. I told myself it was lack of sleep. Drivers hear things sometimes. I rolled the windows down a little and focused on the highway. A few minutes later, I noticed the CB display lighting up, even though the volume was still off. The speaker was silent, but the transmit meter showed someone was talking. Then the volume knob started turning by itself, slowly, like unseen fingers were twisting it. I grabbed it, and the movement stopped. The second I touched it, the man's voice came blasting through the speaker. "Don't stop for her." Up ahead, a pair of headlights appeared on the shoulder. At first I felt relief. Another vehicle, another person, something normal. But as I got closer, I saw an old sedan parked crooked off the road, with the driver's door hanging open. No flashers, no movement. And standing beside it was a woman in a light-colored dress, one arm raised, thumb out, waiting for a ride. I stared at her as I passed. She never moved, never turned her head. She just stood there with her face hidden in shadow. The woman's voice whispered through the CB, "Don't leave me." Then the man, louder now, "Keep driving." I did. I didn't even think about stopping, not after the radio, not after the way she stood so still. About 20 minutes later, I saw lights ahead and thought I was coming up on a truck stop. It wasn't a truck stop. It was an accident scene. 2 sheriff's cruisers, an ambulance, flares on the shoulder, and in the ditch, nose down in the grass, was an old sedan with the driver's door open, the same one. I slowed as I went by, same faded body, same crooked angle, same open door. A deputy shined his flashlight toward my cab, and in that sweep of light I saw there was nobody standing beside the car. I drove to the next rest area and pulled under the brightest lamp I could find. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped my phone once before I got a signal and called the county sheriff's office. I told the dispatcher I'd just passed an accident and thought I might have seen the same vehicle earlier up the road. She asked where. I gave her the mile marker as best I could. There was a pause. Then she said, "Sir, that accident happened around midnight." I frowned. "That's not possible. I passed that car maybe 20 minutes ago." Another pause. Then she asked, "Was there anyone standing outside the vehicle?" I stared out at the empty rest area. "Yeah," I said. "A woman." The dispatcher went quiet for a long moment. Finally, she said the driver was female. She was pronounced dead at the scene. I didn't answer. She asked if I wanted an officer sent out to meet me. I almost said yes. But what was I supposed to tell him? I said no and hung up. I should have shut the truck down and waited for daylight. Instead, I sat there with every cab light on, staring at the radio. After a few minutes, it crackled again. The man's voice said, "You did good." Then the woman, farther away this time, like she was speaking from the end of a long tunnel. I was cold. The speaker hissed. Then a third voice came through. A child. Clear. Calm. "Are you stopping for us next time?" I tore the CB out of the dash right there. I didn't turn it off. I didn't unplug it. I grabbed the whole unit with both hands and yanked. Then I threw it into the passenger floorboard and sat there shaking, listening to my own heartbeat. I drove the rest of that run without a radio. The next morning, after I made my delivery, I took the broken CB into a truck stop shop and asked the guy behind the counter if he could test it. He plugged it in, checked the wiring, checked the mic, then gave me a strange look. "Squelch is bad," he said. "Speaker 2. So it was malfunctioning?" He shrugged. "This thing shouldn't have made any sound at all." I left it there and bought a new one. I told myself that was the end of it. Then I got back to my truck. On the passenger floorboard, where the broken CB had been sitting earlier, there was a wet footprint, barefoot, small enough to belong to a woman or a child. And beside it, pressed into the dust like someone had steadied themselves climbing into the cab, were 3 long finger marks. I still keep a CB in the truck. Some habits don't die. But after midnight, if the road is empty and a voice comes through that sounds too close, too calm, or too personal, I turn it off, because I don't think those voices were random.